Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 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 1, 2, 3.
Good morning. As we have quorum present, I'd like to call this meeting of the Expanding Housing and Support Services for Women and Transgender Community Subcommittee to order. Please remember that all electronic devices, except those used to participate in this meeting, are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. We'll start with a roll call. Please indicate your presence when I call your name. Councillor Kretsch. Councillor Nan.
Present.
Councillor Alex Wilson.
Present.
Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Here.
Michelle Scott, I believe, is having technical difficulties, but she is here. Julie Vora.
Yeah, here it's Vora. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Jasmine Whiteside.
Here.
And the non-voting member, Robin Perry.
Present.
Thank you. Our first order of business is appointment of chair and vice chair. May I please have nominations for the position of chair? Any nominations? Councillor Wilson, Alex Wilson.
Just going to ask if Councillor Nan's interested in continuing on from the previous term of council. I'd be happy to, not to get ahead of ourselves, but happy to step in as vice chair or something. And if we want to talk about a transition after a couple of meetings or just after a bit of a transition from previous term, just not feeling like was there last term. And so I don't know if there's some continuity that would be helpful. So just checking to see if Councillor Nan's interested first.
Through you to my colleague, appreciate the offer. I think, honestly, this term of the subcommittee is really able to pick up the pieces and go with it. I think really the transition is we need to get an update from the city in terms of where we're at based on previous term of work up to the end of that term as it relates to this file, and then get clarity around where we at now, and then enable the subcommittee to have a conversation about where we need to go from here. So we really are still in really infancy places with this subcommittee at times in the previous term. So I don't feel like there's anything of considerate transition that's required, but it's up to my subcommittee members. If that is something that would serve the subcommittee, I'm happy to do so, but also don't feel like it's necessary for me.
Yes. You still have the floor, Councillor.
Okay, not seeing a lot of hands jumping up. I guess I'm happy to I'm listening carefully to what was said there. Happy to self-nominate, and then to the broader membership of the committee, just this is something that we can change relatively simply, actually. Like, we can have conversations. And so if this is something that someone's interested in taking on a leadership role in kind of the administration of this committee, happy to maybe have some chats and talk about transitioning that pretty quickly. But I'll self-nominate for now, and we can see about maybe building in some capacity.
So Councillor M. Wilson has agreed to move the nomination, seconded by yourself. Is there any further nominations? Seeing none, show of hands vote. All those in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Thank you. I'll now ask for nominations for the position of vice chair. You take that to the councillor. Any nominations for vice chair? Thank you.
Through yourself, clerk, are you able to just let us know maybe what the role entails for some folks who are maybe unfamiliar with this? The vice chair, kind of, can they be virtual? Can they be in person? Like, what would a good vice chair maybe have in capacity, and what supports are available for a vice chair?
Yeah. So the procedural bylaw states that the chair should be here in person. So the vice chair can participate virtually, but if the chair is going to be absent, ideally the vice chair would come to the meeting in person. They would also participate in like agenda setting with the chair and the committee clerk and staff. They would also act as the representative for the committee in the absence of the chair. But generally, a lot of the heavy lifting is done by the chair. The vice chair just steps in the absence of the chair. So I don't know if that has encouraged anyone who's interested. We could also defer consideration of a vice chair into a future meeting, so members have a chance to think about it. Is that something that's interested of committee? We just need a mover and seconder to defer the consideration of that.
I'm happy to defer consideration in order to give full committee members an opportunity to consider the role. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Seconded by, I believe I saw Councillor M. Wilson. All those in favor? Is there anyone opposed? That item's carried. Thank you. I'll now pass it over to Chair Alex Wilson.
Oh, I didn't even see you put these in front of me. Thank you, Elsie Gauthier. Are we at approval of the agenda then? Perfect. So this first meeting, I'll just start with a couple of remarks as your chair. This meeting's going to be a little weird for folks joining online. Just administratively, we have to get going and be established before we can actually have some conversations. And I don't think we found a way to make this transition less clunky as a city. And so apologies for, I think, what is an overwhelming start to a first meeting. We're just going to go through our agenda now. Today's agenda has the approval of minutes from the last meeting from a previous term of council, as well as approving our terms of reference. Once that's done, just a heads up, it's my intention to meet with folks on the committee between this meeting and our next meeting to talk about vice chair roles, to see what folks' interests are about future agenda items, and have this future agendas be a little bit more kind of proactive in terms of folks knowing what's going to be there, have a sense of the line of sight. But because we're just getting going and just getting started, we're in this little bit of a transitionary phase. So with that said, we have a 2-item agenda today. One of those items is approving minutes. Would I be able to have a mover and a seconder to get that agenda on the floor? I saw Councillor Maureen Wilson and Councillor Nan. And if there's no changes to the agenda, which I don't anticipate on day one, not seeing anyone wave there, could I just get a show of hands vote all in favor of that approval? And then Michelle, if you're able to post in the chat or react with a thumbs up if you're having some technical difficulties there, just so. Gotcha.
I just wondered if I could add something. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm just going to, yep. So the agenda has been carried. We've got that approved. Julie?
It's Julie. Yeah. I wondered, you know what? I apologize. I don't know that I received the agenda as an attachment. So it's kind of limiting my ability to participate right now. Is there an item where we could just introduce ourselves to one another? Because I don't really know anybody, and that might help me work better with other people. Thanks.
I really appreciate that suggestion, and I think this is an example of where that formality of the first meeting sometimes traps us and doing some of those things. So taking that lead, I think Julie, that would be a really good suggestion to do now before we get into the terms of reference. If we want to just take a moment, go around. I'm happy to start just to give folks a chance to take a breath, think about what they might want to say. I am Alex Wilson. I was elected the councillor for the Ward 13 area, which is Dundas and a large chunk of Flamborough in the 2022 election. Use he, him, they, them pronouns. And I'm excited to be having this conversation with folks from across the community about how we can continue to improve. Our housing response has changed so much in the past couple of years, but this kind of focus and this need to think about who's being left behind and whose needs are maybe not being met in the current system remains prevalent, even though there's been some broad changes in the system and the response so far. And so happy to have these conversations, and this committee that was, it sounds like just getting its legs in the last term of council. Maybe we can find more of that kind of push now to see where those roles are and what that is. And so I'm just going to maybe pass it to Councillor Maureen Wilson beside me, and then if everyone else is just able to name the person they're passing it to, we'll get through this.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. Well, not an introductory remark. I think also Julie, raised a question about they didn't have access to the agenda, and I just wanted to know if I could have a response from clerks through you on that.
Yeah, through the chair, I have resent the agenda. I'm not the regular committee clerk for this committee, but I believe it probably was sent. Usually we publish the agenda 1 week in advance. So it should have been distributed last Thursday to members.
Yeah, didn't get it. Is there someone that can share that now in the chat?
Yeah.
Or no,
Yeah, through the chair, I have just resent it, so you should be getting it momentarily.
Okay, perhaps I'll just carry on and folks can let us know if they have successfully received it. Maureen Wilson, proud to represent Ward 1, which is from about the edge of Dundas all the way to Queen Street. If you split that street in the middle from the water up to the escarpment. I served on the committee last term of council and anxious to move this forward within the context now of our strategic approach to housing. Thank you, Chair. Beg your pardon. I'm going to pass it to Councillor Nan, just because I want to make sure everybody has that time to receive the agenda. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. My name is Councillor Nan, the proud councillor for Ward 3 from Wellington Street to Ottawa Street and from the escarpment to the water. Had the honor of serving as chair after some discussion last term on council about where we are falling short from a gender-based analysis on the needs of women, non-binary, and trans folks as it relates to the entire spectrum of housing, with an emphasis around reports we received as a council from sectoral partners as well as residents in terms of the lack of access and the overcapacity consistently being experienced in shelter systems and those support services that were geared towards women, non-binary, and trans folks. And so the subcommittee was struck then to see how the city might be able to move forward real solutions that enable us to demonstrate outcome, but also be tracked by what the municipality is able to do in our community to address the systemic disparity. I am super excited about continuing this work with all of you around the table, as well as our community partners and with city staff, and continue to demonstrate progress in tangible ways, not only in terms of numbers of beds, but more importantly, number of safe, dignified homes for women, non-binary, and trans-led households. Thank you.
Julie, are you able to start off next, and when you're done your intro, pass it to someone else?
sure, happy to do that. I just I have been refreshing my email, and so I just wanted to give an update that nothing's come through. Anyways, I work as a nurse. I also identify as gender nonconforming, non-binary. My pronouns are she, they. I have an interest in health and kind of work in health services. Very passionate about housing. So again, like everybody else has said, excited to work. And so I just wanted to clarify, like, does everybody want to be referred to by their last names in this? Because that's like in the introductions, that's what I've heard so far. So I just wanted to be clear, like, about how we should address each other. That would be helpful for me. I just wanted to be respectful of people's preferences. Yeah, I would find it helpful to get the attachments before the meeting so I can be prepared and participate. Yeah, because I think that's my interest when I volunteered, was to really, wanting to participate. And yeah, I am having a hard time kind of seeing people's names. Sorry. Robin, Perry, is it okay if I pass it to you?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a non-voting member. I'm a staff member, senior project manager on the housing and homelessness team at Housing Services Division. I've been on the team for about 9 years. I'm also a person with lived experience, so I'm really happy to serve on this committee serving my city. And my pronouns are she, they. Thank you.
Jasmine, are you able to introduce yourself next, please?
Yeah, I'm Jasmine Whiteside. I use she, her pronouns. I work as a software developer Yeah, since coming out, I've gotten really invested and involved, with the trans space, and seeing this committee. I want to, really be a part of it, since even just coming out, I've known like quite a few people who have tried to access Hamilton's housing resources, and like have really just run into issues with over like them being over capacity or them not having access to anywhere. So yeah, that's a bit about me. I'm not sure who hasn't gone yet. I guess maybe Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle, if you're having technical difficulties, no worries. We can kind of maybe figure that out, or if something in the chat could be posted, we can read that out as well. Just don't want to kind of put the pressure on it, because we know there is a bit not an ability to connect potentially right now. Just checking in. Is there anything from Michelle in the chat? Okay, that's okay. So just taking in a couple of housekeeping things that came up through the introduction. So our goals today formally are to get this committee established so we can do work as a committee, including informal work, such as maybe having some conversations with each other in advance of the next meeting, just about some of that introductory piece, getting to know each other, et cetera. And so really hearing from folks that a bit of a transition would be helpful. And so I'm seeing Michelle's just posted an intro in the chat. I might ask Elsie Gauthier to verbalize that for all of us. And then after we've done some introductions, I'm going to propose a couple next steps just to get us through our agenda and a little bit in advance of our next meeting as well.
Through the chair, Michelle noted that her name is Michelle Scott. She uses the pronouns she, her, and she's an associate professor at Laurier in the Faculty of Social Work and looks forward to serving.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, everyone, for those intros. And so I think a couple things that are coming out of this are it would be helpful to have a bit of a time to maybe soft transition into this. And so sometimes that can happen by coming to a meeting earlier in person and just having a bit of an informal chance to chat with each other. Seeing a lot of folks virtually and knowing that folks are coming in work days and other things, that may be logistically difficult. Wondering if we could maybe all work with the clerks between this meeting and our next one to see if we can have a virtual version of that. We just have to make sure we're not advancing committee business. But a chance to just chat with each other and say hello, like, this is who I am. We can find hopefully something like that out. And so I'll work with the clerks team between our next meeting and that and see if we can maybe have a virtual hello about some of that and answer some kind of FAQs about just city process more generally and what sitting on committees are. The other pieces are just approving those minutes from the last meeting, as well as approving our terms of reference. Hearing from folks that they haven't had a ton of time to sit with the terms of reference, I'm going to make the suggestion, and I'll do it formally when we get to that agenda item, that we approve the terms of reference as they are today with the ability to make recommendations on edits whenever we would like. Because without those terms of reference, we don't really have a raison d'etre, like a reason to be in existence and doing work. And so just if we could get those approved on an interim basis, that might be something that we want to take on as committee work. If we have any edits or have any changes, the terms of reference have to deal with things about who sits on this committee, how they're selected, some of those things. It may also be helpful to check in after we've had a chance to meet as a committee. And we actually have some advice on the terms of reference from experience as well. So in terms of our meeting in front of us today, those are kind of the two agenda items there, but really hearing that this transition, there's work to do on this transition and getting folks up to speed so we can have a really successful next meeting and a focused agenda conversation there. So I'll just kind of scan for any hands if there's any kind of conversations on that while we're being a little bit more informal, and then I'll just jump right back into our agenda, which again will be the minutes next, and then the terms of reference. But just any kind of comments, does that kind of meet some of the concerns that were being raised about access? Are there any concerns with that kind of moving forward? Okay, just going to give it a sec because I know folks are seeing some things and I'm a fast talker. Okay, with that said, if anyone has any issues, access to participate, please feel free to raise your virtual hand or wave and we'll make sure to get you on the speakers list. I'm going to switch back to our agenda just for a sec as we move to declarations of interest. This is something that we ask at every meeting. These are essentially conflicts of interest. I believe you should have received training or like a policy on that, or that can be sent out as well in advance of the next one as well to make sure folks have it. But if there's not a financial interest, is a pretty safe one for the terms of reference. I don't anticipate folks would be having one, but just something to think about. So if there are any declarations of interest, this is the part in the meeting where we call for them. Are there any declarations of interest on today's meeting? Not seeing any. We can move right along to the approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor Maureen Wilson and Councillor Nan, I believe you were the two that were in attendance at the last meeting because it was during the last term. Are you able to move those? Councillor Maureen Wilson, second Councillor Nan. Everyone in favor of just approving those minutes from the previous term? That's a show of hands vote if folks are able to just raise their hands, understanding that, yeah, there hasn't been a ton of time to digest them. And also they are from several years ago at this point now as well. I'm going to call that carried. And then, Kirk, you're okay if I just jump right along? Perfect. So then we're on to item 8.1. This is expanding housing and support services for women and non-binary and transgender community subcommittee terms of reference. May I please have a mover and a seconder to put the terms of reference on the floor? So that's just enabling discussion. We have a mover and a seconder to seeing Councillor Nan, Councillor Maureen Wilson. Councillor Maureen Wilson, I think it might be just a little simpler. Can I pass the chair to you for this conversation? I'm going to move a motion.
Certainly, please proceed.
So in addition to approving these today, I'd like to add just a little addition to that amendment on the floor, if you will, just to suggest that we review these in Q3 of 2026 after we've had a chance for the committee to meet. We'll have that specialized date. So that way folks aren't feeling like we're approving something today and then never coming back to it. Just penciling in a review date of Q3 for this committee to have that back on the agenda. And if we have edits, we can make them then. If we don't, we can just 5 seconds on the agenda, it's done. But just formalizing that opportunity to come back and look at those when folks have had a thorough amount of time to look at them and make some suggestions. So I'm assuming that might be a and I'll stop being the chair and I'm leave that with you. And Councillor Nan, I think, has a hand.
Thank you. Just before I recognize Councillor Nan, just seeking clarification on the date Q3 of this year.
No, so about 8 months from now. So I'm imagining like late spring, early summer of 26. So we've had a chance to actually have some time as a committee.
For the TORs?
Yes. So maybe making a recommendation for the next term of council or the next, doing a bit of a housekeeping.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Nan, please.
Thank you. Through you, Acting Chair, wanted to see if there could be a friendly amendment for Q2 2026. Only because it is August now, we're meeting for the first time this term. I think 6 to 8 months is a reasonable time frame, but I do believe that brings us into Q2 of 2026 versus Q3.
I'm seeing that is considered a friendly from the mover. Thank you.
Through the chair, we just need a seconder for that as well.
Councillor Nan is willing to second. So just so that there's some clarity on the floor, we have the terms of reference as they're presented on the agenda. We have an amendment within that context that these terms of reference will come back with the goal for final Q2 of 2026. And I'm seeing a nod in the affirmative from Councillor Alex Wilson. So we'll go with the amendment first. Thank you. If you can raise your hand if you're in agreement to vote in the affirmative with that direction.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time following. What could you just kind of rephrase for me what we're agreeing to?
I'll try my best, or perhaps the clerk can take ownership of this to ensure a non-biased review of where I think we are.
Through the chair, the recommendation on the floor right now is that the terms of, because there's no action contained within the terms of reference, they're to be received by the committee. Councillor Alex Wilson, seconded by Councillor Nan, is suggesting that an additional clause be added indicating that in addition to receiving the terms of reference, that essentially the committee clerk would place the terms of reference back on the agenda in Q2 2026 for the committee to review it at that time.
Thanks, that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I would just add one more thing. So what you'd be voting on right now is just that second part, the amendment, which is that the clerk be directed to place the terms of reference on the agenda in Q2 2026. After we vote on that item, we would then vote on the main motion as a whole, which is to receive the terms of reference with that additional amendment. Is that clear?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if it's a legacy hand, but I'd like to recognize member, and I beg your pardon, Scope. Is member Scope, would you wish to speak to this amendment? I think I'm not, no, it's okay. Not hearing anything. Is there anything in the chat to the clerk?
No.
Okay. So I don't see any further hands up or indication of a member wishing to speak to the amendment put forward by member Alex Wilson. So if we could have a vote, if you support the amendment, I would request that I see something in the affirmative, whether it be a hand or a virtual hand up or something in the chat if those avenues are not available to you technologically or otherwise. I'm seeing hands, the majority hands up in the affirmative. So the amendment carries. Thank you. And I'll pass the chair back to Chair Alex Wilson.
Thank you. So
through the chair, staff are just flagging just one possible amendment to the terms of reference is that in the currently it reports to this committee reports to Emergency and Community Services. The majority of, or I believe all of Housing Services now reports to General Issues Committees. So it makes sense to make that amendment now, that this committee would report to General Issues Committee if
okay, yeah, we can do that now if it's easier than doing it at ECS and sending it over as part of the next committee agenda cycle. Sure. So that's, I'll just maybe reinterpret what the chair was saying. We have a housekeeping issue here. As a city council, we've said we'd like all housing issues to go to General Issues Committee. This committee currently doesn't report to General Issues Committee, but it is a housing related matter. We just have to clean up that where these reports go. So it's instead of going to kind of committee A, it's going to go to committee B. That doesn't necessarily impact the work we do. It's just where our minutes and where our agendas filter up in the city system. And it's, I would describe definitionally a housekeeping amendment. And so Councillor Nan, Councillor Maureen Wilson, I'm assuming that's friendly to you. So additionally approving these with that just housekeeping amendment in place. Okay. So that was friendly, and friendly just means that we're not going to have an additional vote. Like it's okay with the mover and seconder to just quickly add that into the motion on the floor. And so what's on the floor right now for approval is, as Elsie Ctee described earlier, we're going to receive these terms of reference. We're going to make a little tweak that we report to the General Issues Committee instead of Emergency Community Services, because that's council-related decision that's already occurred. And then we're going to have this conversation again in about 6 months when we've had some time to be a committee and think about if these terms of reference are the best suiting for go-forward basis as well. So those are the three things we're doing. We're receiving them, changing the place where we're reporting, and having this conversation again in 6 months when we've all had a bit more time to actually digest and look at this and can have maybe more substantive conversation about it. So that's been moved by, I believe it was Councillor Nan and seconded by Councillor Maureen Wilson. Is there any questions, comments, or discussion on that? And if I don't see any, the next step would be a vote.
Yeah, I just have a question, sorry, about the changing of reporting. Is there any background you can share about why we would report to somebody different and how that might, I don't know, does it make it a lower I don't know, how in the hierarchy, if it makes it a lower priority for people if we're reporting to a different committee, or if that committee meets less frequently, what are the impacts of changing the reporting?
So I'll maybe give it to staff to follow up, but I'll just give you the initial answer, which is this was a council-wide decision because not all councillors sit on the Emergency and Community Services Committee, but all councillors have to sit on General Issues Committee. And so folks were feeling like housing issues were important enough that all members of council should always have a line of sight on them. And so standing committees that didn't have full membership weren't where the majority of councillors wanted those conversations to be happening. They wanted them to be happening in a place where everyone was at the table. So I think that answers some of the kind of concerns, but I'll maybe give it to staff just for a very kind of in case I missed anything or to expand on that answer as well. And if you could introduce yourself as well. Thank you.
Through the chair, Grace Mader, I'm the general manager with Healthy and Safe Communities. Just to follow up on the councillor's explanation is that we were finding housing related matters were coming to the Emergency and Community Services Committee. And then because of that interest by all members around the table, we were having to replicate it again at General Issues Committee and then at council. So we've found that since the direction to have all housing related reports going to the full membership at the General Issues Committee, that we're able to have a much more broad conversation and a more direct answer any questions directly to all members of the council.
Thank you so much for that explanation. That makes sense.
No, and thank you, Julie. I think it is good to get these things on the record or to make sure when someone's saying, oh, it's housekeeping, like we understand what, even though it's, understand those. So I really appreciate that question as well. So if there are no other discussion on what's in front of us, I'm going to call for a vote. So moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Maureen Wilson. All those in favor, please wave your hand, indicate thumbs up. Michelle, if you're able to give us a virtual thumbs up or thumbs down or wave again, that'd be appreciated. Okay, it is carried. I hear from the clerk. So I'm just going to kind of go through the agenda as if there was things on the agenda so we get a little bit of a sense of the categories. So after we go through maybe items for consideration or main agenda items that would be there on the agenda ahead of time, so maybe we've asked for reports to come back, maybe staff are bringing us information. That's what the section of the agenda we would have just gone through is those items for consideration. After that, we would have a discussion about any motions that committee members are bringing. So those could be motions that ask for further information to come forward. Those could be motions that suggest direction, keeping in mind our scope and mandate as a committee, and then that direction kind of filters up through the organization. So those are the types of things that we might be able to do at this moment in an agenda. We have notices of motion, which are just motions that maybe someone's removing that they didn't have a chance to raise in enough time for everyone to give consideration. So what they're doing is they're flagging at our next meeting they'd like to discuss it. So they're giving us notice at this meeting, that next meeting I'd like to have this conversation. General information and other business is typically an opportunity where if there's a quick update or something time sensitive from staff that's not maybe full enough to have a report attached to it, we'd get a quick verbal update. It's not typical that those are on every subcommittee, just when there is one. And then we would adjourn. Before we move to adjournment, just some commitments from me is you'll be getting an email from me, so that'll be from either alex.wilson@hamilton.ca or ward13@hamilton.ca, just an individual check in to have a conversation with you about how this meeting went, what you're looking for in the next meeting, some topics of conversation or things that you're looking to learn more about, or just what you think would enable your full participation on this committee. So I'll be doing that and then bringing some thoughts there forward. There's also going to be some information sent out in advance of our next meeting, just reminding folks, making sure we have that communication going forward as well. And I'll have a conversation with our clerk for this committee just about what possibility we have for maybe a informal start to some things. So those are some things that you'll hear from me as your chair about. I'm seeing the clerk has their microphone on, and I also see Councillor Nan's hand.
That's what.
Oh, so Councillor Tay.
Thank you, Chair, for that overview of the agenda. And I really appreciate the way that you're chairing, enabling as many of our committee members clarity around our process and also making it very clear about what shaping the agenda going forward collaboratively could look like. In that spirit, if it would be helpful, I did want to table a notice of motion, and I'm open to consideration of waiving of the rules in order to get some of that conversation information to the table sooner than later. My proposed notice of motion is that the city staff be directed to provide a summary of A, the state of housing and homelessness supports and services for women, non-binary and trans folks in Hamilton, and B, the outcomes achieved since the last meeting of the subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nan, if you were interested in waiving notice, so typically we'd waive notice if there was a time-sensitive reason, an urgency to do it, or there was some reason. So for example, a long hiatus between years of committee meeting and wanting to get going. So I'm not going to make that argument for you, but if you are interested in waiving the notice, you just need a seconder to do so. Councillor Maureen Wilson's indicated she'd be willing. Would you like to have that just considered as a full motion today?
I'd really appreciate that. Yes, thank you.
So just for the full committee, we're going to go through a two-step process here. So it's generally we try and respect people's time and give people advance notice. Obviously, things can come up. This is an example of something that's come up. So we have to make two decisions here. We first have to decide if we're going to have this conversation today or if we'd like to have this conversation at our next meeting. That's what waiving notice would be, waiving the rules of notice. So if we want to have this conversation on Councillor Nan's motion, which is to get a report back on some information sooner, we'd first say yes to waiving the rules, and then we could go into a discussion on the motion itself, which is to get a summary of what's going on in the city, to paraphrase, to get a summary of what's happening with respect to this file, which won't comment as chair, but could definitely be helpful to getting us going. So if there's no kind of questions on that process, we're first just going to waive the motion to waive the rules. So that was moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Maureen Wilson to enable discussion on the motion. Is there any concern? I'm seeing some nods. Any concerns with that? If not, we'll just go right to a vote. If folks are able to raise their hand, virtually seeing nods from everyone. Clerk, that's carried. Yep. Okay. And so now we're on to the motion itself. Thank you so much, Michelle. On to the motion itself, which is, can we get this report back? Councillor Nan, can you just remind us what you're hoping to include in the report back so we can get a chance to jot that down? But I did see nods from staff that they'd be willing to put that together when you were describing it the first time. Oh, perfect. We are going to be sharing it. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, I wrote it into the chat so that all the committee members would have it, and then also to get it to the clerks as quickly as possible.
Perfect. So that city staff be directed to provide a summary of the state of housing and homelessness supports and services for women, non-binary and trans folks in Hamilton, and that the outcomes achieved since the last meeting of this subcommittee. So getting a report back on both of those. I do see that there's some conversation now. So if you have any kind of comments, questions, additions, recommendations on this, that's what we're going to next. I currently see Councillor Maureen Wilson, and then if anyone else has their hands up, I'll be able to see the digital screen in a second. But Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Member Nan for this very welcome motion. I am wondering, though, it's my comment or question for a slight amendment is tethered to the housekeeping discussion we had, which is council. All members of council were interested in learning about housing matters, but further to that, all members of council were active in reviewing and supporting, I believe, the housing sustainability and investment roadmap. And that is the roadmap which is to guide strategically the city's actions. So I'm wondering whether there would be value because this is set within that housing portfolio where we could perhaps include that we'll share that report and any updates that have been provided annually to that report with members as well. Thank you.
Councillor Nan is including mention of the HSIR specifically as part of that state of housing, I'm imagining, but being just specific on kind of some of the scoping of that. Is that a friendly amendment?
Certainly it is that the state of housing and homelessness supports and services for women, non-binary and trans folks in Hamilton, including but not limited to the the HSIR. Yeah, there we go. And so much that, if I could, Chair, the Housing Sustainability Investment Roadmap for other subcommittee members is our citywide strategy looking at the entire spectrum of housing And what we've done as a council and with city staff accomplishing the framework is to embed our strategy under one large umbrella. And that current framework is inclusive of an equity framework. And so very much this work would be itemized inside of the HSIR, but given the mandate of this committee, it would be great to look at that disaggregated information in order to mutually support the work of the subcommittee, inform general issues committee of the discussion of this subcommittee, and then vis-a-vis if that makes any further recommendations for the housing sustainability investment roadmap strategy going forward. So friendly, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Through the chair, we just need a seconder on the motion as well.
I think Councillor Maureen Wilson was the seconder. Oh, so that would make it very friendly then. So we've waived the rules, correct? Yes. And so now we're discussing the motion itself. There was a suggested amendment from Councillor Maureen Wilson. It was deemed friendly, so we don't need to vote on that amendment. Are there any other conversations, questions, dialogue about this before proceeding to a vote that the committee would like to have?
I'm not sure it's for this time, but I guess I'd just like to hear more about how you see like the volunteer people, I guess, contributing, or like what role we'll have. Yeah, anyways, thanks.
Thanks. I'm gonna, if we're okay to vote on this, and then I'm happy to come back and address that when we're just not in the kind of conversation on the motion, if that's okay with you, Julie. I do have some suggestions for that, but I do think your input's also gonna, and everyone else's input is gonna shape that as well. But just on specific to this motion, is there any comments there? If not, I'll just call for the vote. Councillor Nan?
Thank you, Chair Wilson. Just a quick question over to staff, recognizing that I'm putting this on the table, and I think all of the information already exists in other annual reports, but just if we could hear from staff about the ability to provide that disaggregated lens. Thank you.
Through the chair. So Councillor, it's Michelle Baer, Director of Housing Services. So you're correct. All of the pieces of information you've asked for, we do have in different reports. We have in work underway already. I think that there's lots of work, of course, to do on this front. However, a significant amount of work in progress has happened, and the context has changed greatly since this group last met. So I think it's actually quite worthwhile that we go back, bring that all forward with where we are, both in housing services, what's been achieved, where this committee sort of left off, and where we've progressed since then. And it's very feasible to bring that forward.
Wonderful. And through you then, Chair, if we could get clarity on a time frame for this report back, and would that then, question to you, Chair, inform when our next meeting would be?
Yeah.
Through the chair, Grace Mader, Councillor Nand, we are actually planning our annual update with regarding the Housing Stability Investment Roadmap. That's going to be coming in November, so we can incorporate this information into that update. We could also, according to your motion, we could also look at an update to this committee prior to that report, getting put on the table for the broader community.
Thank you. Through you, hear from our staff colleagues that October is a reasonable timeframe for the report.
Yes, that is being indicated. And then just a note for committee meetings. So now that we have a chair of the committee, meetings are, my understanding, is called at the bequest of the chair, and then we schedule with everyone through the clerk's team and their logistics. So now that we have a chair calling our meetings and things like that, that's something that can actually happen. And that's why part of today is just getting going and getting started so we can do some of the things. And so appreciating that it also, I'll just add, I think it makes sense for committee members to be able to provide some feedback on those progress or those reports before they're included maybe in a status-wide update. So that's something, just going back to Julie, your question about the committee's role, that'd be an opportunity to provide feedback on that scope of work before it gets included in a council-wide update, for example, and getting a kind of an earlier lens at that look to provide some specific commentary. Councillor Nanal, you have the floor. Anything else on this?
So it's up to clerk to determine, but if we need to put a date for the motion so that this subcommittee also has its own OBL, outstanding business list,
Sure.
then we can put in the date. Q3 of 2025. Okay, that's it. No further comments. Thank you, Chair.
Perfect. Then we have a mover, we have a seconder, we've had some discussion, just continuing to see if there's any other discussion on this motion, and then we can have other conversations that we might need to have, but just specific to this motion, anyone else? Not seeing anyone, I see Grace Mader.
Apologies, thank you through the chair. Just Q3 would be the end of September. So could we say Q4 for an October timeline?
Could we say October, if that's what we're all saying, and then just we know what we're saying? Perfect. Here we go. Okay, with no one else raising their hand, we're going to go to a vote. So that's just a show of hands vote. If you're supportive of this motion, there's also an opportunity to say no if you didn't support getting this information back at our next meeting. And Councillor Nanam, is that your vote itself? Yeah, okay, so this is the moment for everyone to raise their hands or indicate their vote. Perfect. I see that as carried, clerk's agreeing. Okay, so we have now gone through, that was a notice of motion. That's how that can work. So thank you, Councillor Nan, as well, for indicating how, a notice could go. We could waive that notice. It could become a motion. We could move through that process. So that was a good example as well. Is there any other notices of motion? Okay, seeing none, I do just want to say, going back to the comment Julie raised about how are we all going to participate, I think, again, that's part of my commitment to all of you is to have those one-on-one meetings before our next meeting to get a sense of what folks are looking to participate in, how to do that, and have a conversation, because we all have the same ability to move motions here, and that's the activity to get the work done. So if someone's like, I really want to focus in on this, or I really want to focus in on that, just so there's full kind of transparency, or my one-on-ones are not going to be like, here's how to do this, or here's what you should be doing. It's definitely going to be a question about what are your goals here, what's the feedback you're trying to provide, and then maybe making some suggestions to you on, well, here's how to move a motion, or here's how to get in touch with staff about that, or here's your rights as a committee member and how to kind of embody that work. So definitely more of a, how do we meet your goals as opposed to a, here's what you should be doing. But if there's any questions about kind of the formality or the process, also happy to be a guide there. And we also have our clerks team. So before we get to adjournment, just Elsie Gauthier, are you able to refresh folks on, if they do have any questions, who the typical clerk is for this committee, and just the best contact information for folks if they're having any administrative or just need a touch point in between now and our next meeting?
Through the chair, the clerk for this subcommittee is Jessica Versace. The easiest way to probably reach her would be by emailing our general email inbox, which is clerk@hamilton.ca.
Okay. Thank you, Elsie Gauthier. I'm just doing a quick scan around. Folks will get an email from me before end of this week as well, to just have some dialogue about our next meeting. I'm going to kind of do a soft close here because I'm going to pause to see if there's any kind of general information or other business, we'll call it. But if I don't see any hands after kind of a little bit of a minute, I'm going to call that the meeting's adjourned, but just want to give folks a minute for any kind of closing thoughts, if there is any, because this was our first meeting and it is a bit of an adjustment. I'm not seeing any hands, so I'm going to say that because we've got through the business on our agenda, that today's meeting is adjourned at 10:51 a.m. With lots of conversation to come before our next meeting to make sure we're all on the same page and are able to participate fully. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your morning.